Okay guys, welcome back to this tutorial. This tutorial is going to focus on how you can create some geometry on the top of your rim here, extrude it through it to give you some sort of a pattern. Now the style that you choose for whatever holes that are going to go in here will be based upon your research that you've done into the type of car and the type of mag wheel rim that you want to design. I'm just going to do something fairly simple, just some sort of symmetric pattern about the center point here. So if we want to do any sort of pattern, of course, we need to start off with a sketch, and that sketch needs to go onto some construction plane. I've just noticed that I've jumped out of the program. There we go, back in the program now. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is to sort of create a work plane up here above this surface, so then I can draw some geometry on it. So I'm going to locate a plane that's already horizontal. You can see this one here. I know that's my origin plane that's horizontal. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to come up to the construction toolbox up here, and the first one says offset plane. So I'm going to select offset plane, and then using the blue arrow, I'm going to drag that plane up above my mag wheel rim. Now it doesn't need to go right up there. I'm going to bring it down. No, it doesn't really matter as long as it's above the rim there. And this is the plane that we're going to draw the sketch on of the geometry. Doesn't matter the distance, just as long as it's above it. Click OK, and then let's put a sketch onto this plane that you've just created. So select it, click on sketch, and of course it spins things around so we can see it. All right, a couple of things you need to determine here is where can you start and stop the shape that you're actually going to use to cut out of your mag wheel rim. So if you think back to the design of the rim, if I just spin this around here, we know that the rim comes in and touches the brake rotor at some point. So I might just go to my sectional view. This will explain it. So if we cut a hole out and that hole went, excuse me, too close to the brake rotor nuts here, and it came and touched or cut out into the brake rotor itself and removed some of the surface mounting area, then that would be unsatisfactory. If we cut a hole out and the line went right out to say here on the sort of the J shape of the rim, and it came down and it would actually then cut into the rest of the rim here, which would be no good. So realistically, the area you've got to work with is from the edge of this brake rotor up like so, and from some point at the back of the rim here, draw a line up like so. So what we're going to do is draw two circles on the sketch that represent this position here and approximately the inside of the brake rotor here, inside of the rim here. All right, so I'm going to turn off my section, and I'm going to go back up to my top work plane, which is looking down because I'm still in sketch mode. And so I can see the brake rotor underneath my rim. What I'm going to do is turn the rim to its opacity to about 30%. So come over to the rim here, right click onto it. Towards the bottom you've got opacity control. I'm going to drop that back to 30% so we can kind of see through it. And you can see here now I've got the very outside of the brake rotor, one edge, and that edge there, that black line there, happens to be the surface mounting area. So I'm now going to draw myself a circle from the center here, click once for the center, and I'm going to drag it and just about make it a little bit bigger than the surface mounting area, just probably a few mil bigger, just like that. So I know that that's the innermost arc that I can draw some geometry on. Now I need to put a circle in to represent the outermost point. So like I said before, we don't want it to go any further out than where the rim turns into that J shape. So the J shape's there. I might actually just turn the tire off so it's less confusing. And spin myself around. So looking down on top, I don't want to go any further out than this point here. So back to top view. And that's that point around about there, so I'm just going to bring it back a little bit further. So where it changes sort of that color, that's where I'm going to designate that. You can always move this out later on if you want to, but that's roughly where I'm going to go. So there to about there. Now I've got two circles, an inside circle and outside circle that I can work between. I'm just going to do something really simple, just a simple geometric pattern. So using my line tool now, from the center, and then drag it out and snap it to that circle. The distance is set, but the degrees, I'm going to make the degrees, I don't know, I'm going to make 12 degrees. So I hit tab button, type in 12 and hit enter. So I've drawn a line 12 degrees above this horizontal line. Now I'm going to use line again, snap to the center, and I'm going to put one below it as well. So that should be snapping to my line there. There it is there, and hit tab to highlight, and then 12 degrees as well. Now I've got some geometry there. You can see it's highlighted that I could then use to cut through the rim. Now you don't need to delete all this other stuff. You can leave that there. So we're just going to leave it there and hit stop sketch. Go back to 3D view, and you can see there's that sketch. And I'm going to use that geometry to now push through the rim. What I might do now is turn that rim opacity back up again. So right click on rim, opacity control back up to 100. And I'm then going to select this profile and hit E for extrude. And normally here you would pull this down and just drag it right through until it cut a hole, which I suppose you could do. You can see it there underneath. The brake rotor is just in the road, so we're going to make sure we don't hit that brake rotor. So in that case, I'm going to turn that brake rotor off. Go back underneath, have a look. And you can see that my extrusion is just missing the surface mounting area, which is good. And I think out there it's maybe just, okay, here's a problem I think you can see. The outside edge of this extrusion is lining up with this inside edge or the exterior edge of the rim, which means it would cut into it here and make it too thin. So rather than just pulling it down a distance, that's that distance command, there's one other really handy function here. Under the extent command, if you click on the little black arrow there, there's a option which means you can do this extrusion to a predefined surface or to another object. Select that one, and then what you can do is turn everything upside down like that. And if you select this inside face here of the object, like I've got highlighted, and if everything goes according to plan, I hope you can see that, oh no, it didn't like that. So it didn't quite work there. So I'm just going to do that again, back to object, pulling that down. It's not being nice to me. Try again one more time. That's the surface I want to pull it down to. I didn't like that too much at all. It must mean that there's some of this geometry is maybe hitting this edge, and I've got to change the geometry. These functions here and distance and so on we don't want to do. There's no offset's an interesting one in taper, if you did want to do a taper angle, so you can actually spin things around. But look, I'm going to have to go back and redo that later on. All right, let's just choose to distance, and I'm going to have to muck around with that other stuff in a second. You can see here as I hit that taper angle, it then made that taper in or taper out, which is pretty cool. Might just bring it in a bit like so, and pull that down a bit further. Hopefully I've got it through, which I do. And I'm just going to hit OK there. And let's see if it was a success. Yeah, okay, to some degree it's a success, I suppose. All right, so let's turn the brake rotor back on and the tyre back on. And if we have a look, yes, and turn the section back on, we can see from that sectional view that the shape there is cutting through, but it's not cutting through the surface mounting area, and it seems to be far enough away from the rest of the rim here as well to work. So there's a little bit of mucking around there. It's best to use the project to that surface command, but that didn't work for me that time. It might not work for you. And then just a matter of patterning that shape, that extrusion around the center line. So we'll just quickly show you how to do that. So we'll select the actual extrusion by going to the timeline here. That was extrusion there. Come up to, I think it's create, pattern, circular pattern. You can see it's selected the object because we've selected it here. Wants to know the axis. Find the axis. There it is there. It defaults to 3. Let's try something like 12. And it's doing that. That's all good. And click OK. And depending upon how complex that is, something like so. Okay, so if 12 was too many, you could reduce that just by editing the pattern, or if you wanted to go more, so let's try editing that pattern. Right click, edit the feature. Let's try 15 this time. And at some point they're going to start to overlap each other, but you can see that the spokes are getting quite thin there. So I might try that one again. Might go for another multiple of 3. This time I'll go for 18. And let's see what happens. Oh, look at that. They're getting quite thin, which is quite good. Now, that's, I suppose, the simplest design that I could possibly show you. You could do circles, you could do faces of things, you could really get quite creative by doing the different shapes that you want. I suppose the shape that you're going to put in there is really determined by what your research is into your design. Okay. All right, better save that, and then you can have a crack at doing that.